Good evening. Welcome to the January 12th, 2026 Troy City Council meeting. Is Pastor Debbie Stottle here? All right, please rise for the invocation if you're able and remain standing for our Pledge of Allegiance. We give you thanks for the blessings of this day, O Lord, and ask that you continue to bless us here in the city of Troy, here in the council chambers, throughout City Hall, and all through our entire city. Please be with our first responders, our residents in need, and all of the residents here in the city of Troy, so that we may have a peaceful and happy city. We ask that you continue to bless everyone throughout this community and give us strength when we need it. In his name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I'll call the January 12th, 2026 Troy City Council meeting to order and ask for the roll call from Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Here.
Councilmember Bloom?
Here.
Councilmember Brooks?
Here.
Councilmember Chamberlain?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Chanda?
Here.
Councilmember Gunn?
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Here.
All present this evening. First up is certificates of recognition and special presentations. We do have one presentation this evening. C1 is the legislative update by State Representative Sharon McDonnell. So Representative McDonnell, please join us at the podium.
A little faster than I expected. So I heard no luck on the clicker, so I will just say when we need a new page. So slide one. If someone is running. Oh, there we go. Okay. Just a little out of breath. Running over here. Good evening, everyone. I am State Representative Sharon McDonnell, and I'm proud to represent most of Troy, west of John R., in the State House. Thank you, Mr. Baker, Mayor Baker, members of the council, and City Manager Nastasi for having me present today. And thank you all for everything you do to make Troy a great place to live and raise a family. I'm here today to review the last year in the Michigan legislature, especially regarding how it will affect our city in the future. But before I begin, I'll introduce myself briefly. I have lived in Troy 21 years, and I'm proud to say both of my daughters graduated from Troy High. I was first elected to the State House in 2022, and I represent District 56, which also includes all of Clawson, parts of Royal Oak, Birmingham, and Bloomfield Township. I currently serve on 3 committees in the legislature. I also chair the Michigan Legislative Disability Caucus, where all interested parties discuss ways to improve the lives of Michiganders with disabilities and their families. Sorry, we're moving to slide 3. Just makes it more fun. So, as you may know, the Michigan House of Representatives flipped from Democratic to Republican control in the 2024 election. That's just relevant because for the first time in 15 years, we do have a split legislature, and maybe some of that extra negotiating has meant that fewer bills passed the governor's desk last year. Only 74 public acts were signed into law, compared to an average of 383 over the past 2 decades. This has also been a challenging year, or 2025 was a bit of a challenging year for Michigan's economy. Federal tariffs on cars, auto parts, and raw materials have slowed economic growth in our state. Consequently, as the year has progressed, economists have repeatedly revised state revenue estimates downward. And so lower revenues means lower spending. The state is also seeing decreased revenue from the federal government as a result of the OBBB Act. Michigan will receive far less funding for its Medicaid health insurance program for low-income people and SNAP food assistance. The state budget actually moved $7 billion from other budget items to make up for the gap in Medicaid costs, and that is only for the year of 2026. There is not yet a plan for 2027 for the state to make up those funds. Slide number 4. Some legislation was enacted in 2025 that directly affects local governments. I voted in support of a House rule that will make requests for local projects more transparent. In past years, I secured nearly $1 million to build a cricket field at Bowling Park and $10 million for sound walls on I-75. I supported legislation that created the Public Safety and Violence Prevention Trust Fund, which I'll talk about a little bit more, and it will supplement our local law enforcement budgets. In the future, amid decreasing revenues, I will oppose most legislation that exempts sales tax on various products and services. There's been a lot of things lately. Oh, if you buy a new phone, you get no sales tax. The problem is every dollar exempted from our taxes means less funding. So we're trying, as the some of the signs are going down, we need to continue to pay for what we need in the state of Michigan. So slide 5. The budget process was a little bit messy last year. As you can see here, there were significant discrepancies between the constitutionally required budget timeline and how things played out in 2025. The first budget draft was not introduced by the majority well after the statutory deadline, which threw state-funded department and institutions into uncertainty, which was, you may have heard at the time, especially harmful to Michigan's public schools, including Troy Public School District, whose fiscal years actually start on July 1st. Districts were then forced to make fiscal decisions in the dark because the budget wasn't signed until early October. Slide 6. While it wasn't a perfect budget, I did vote for the budget because it kept the state government from shutting down while delivering some wins for Troy. The biggest win was a significant increase of over $1 billion in road funding for the entire state of Michigan. The year's budget also contained a modest boost to the per pupil payments for Michigan's public school districts. And we created that Public Safety Trust Fund, which will supplement our law enforcement. And it's based on factors such as population, size, and crime rates. So it does help districts that are cities and municipalities that are larger and have more crime than we may experience here in Troy. On the losing side, we have decreased revenue sharing. Many cuts in services statewide, less support for programs for people with disabilities and severe mental illness, and way decreased funding for local projects. So on to slide 7. This chart shows how these changes will affect Troy, and the increased funding is clearly the biggest new budget feature, and Troy does very well with 33% increase. And we will also receive, talked about the Public Safety Trust Fund. Right now, the belief is we'll receive about $95,000. On to slide 8. And this is just a little explanation of how the funding change for roads is working. It is a little bit complicated, and I have actually seen some inaccurate media reports and been asked about them, so I wanted to make sure everybody understood how it works. Previously, there was a 6% sales tax on gas, and none of that went to roads. 4% went to schools, 2% for revenue sharing, and the way we've changed it is to end the 6% sales tax and then add a 21 cent per gallon excise tax on gas, which means that that tax won't fluctuate with the price of gas, so it is a constant. And it was intended to be somewhat revenue neutral, which is why it's such a similar price at about $3 a gallon for gas. The new funding for local roads comes from that excise tax, and Troy's doing well, as we said. Making sure this change didn't hurt school funding proved a little more complicated. It created kind of a hodgepodge of new permanent cuts and temporary funding sources. School districts will be watching very closely the fiscal year 2027 budget negotiations to see what happens there. Slide 9, please. In the fiscal year 2026, I requested $5 million for resurfacing parts of Square Lake Road, but this request was denied. I also co-sponsored some of Rep. Tom Kuhn's requests, $750,000 for a mobile command post, which was denied, and $250,000 to improve security for the Hindu Community Relations Council, which was approved. Oop, now slide 10. And I am going to go there, yes. Just because maybe a lot of people have seen this. This is one of the few times since I've been in Lansing where some big news that everyone in Lansing was talking about actually burst through the Lansing bubble, and a lot of people have heard about this. So last month, we did see an unexpected development. The majority party, in a move to create some excitement, I guess, suddenly defunded $645 million in work projects. And this is funding that the recipients understandably assumed they would have had when they made financial decisions and entered into contracts. But that cut was made on December 10th. It was done through a little-known section of the Management and Budget Act that allowed the Appropriations Committee of either chamber to defund multi-year work projects. Just 16 representatives, all in the majority party, voted to kill these projects sight unseen, very obviously without knowing exactly what they were cutting. I learned after the fact that these cuts applied to two important institutions in Troy, the Troy Historic Village, which we've talked a little bit about, I know, in the council. It is supposed to receive $400,000 from the state for site upgrades, and the Troy Fire Department, which received $1.9 million for a new ladder truck. Fortunately, the ladder truck funds have been mostly spent, so that is not a problem. The Historic Village, though, was not notified of these funds until very late in the spring, and then they were told they couldn't start spending them until July, and with some engineering work they had to do before they could begin spending. By the time they were about ready to go, the funds were cut on December 10th. Also in my district, Clawson may have lost desperately needed $1 million for its aging infrastructure that I secured also in 2024. You may be aware that people have been saying not to worry that these funds will be restored, but it's very unclear. Last Wednesday, Attorney General Nessel issued an opinion declaring the statute used to make the cuts was unconstitutional. But just as everybody was getting excited on Friday, Speaker Matt Hall filed a lawsuit to protect the cuts. He actually sued state departments and their directors, seeking an injunction to prevent them from distributing the promised funds to recipients such as the Troy Historic Village in Clawson. So I know this is a little edgy, but I think you can allow me a little frustration because it's really difficult to focus on doing the people's business when we're wasting time fighting over budget dollars promised a year and a half ago. But here we are. So looking forward, slide 11. Here's 3 examples of legislation I'll continue to work on this year. The first is a bill that would name a stretch of I-75 in Troy after Specialist Keith Lavoie, a Troy native who served the U.S. Army and was tragically killed during a training exercise way back in, I believe, the 80s. He is laid to rest at the Whitechapel Cemetery, and his friends and family have asked that this nearby stretch of highway be named in his honor, which I think would be lovely. So we're working on that. Last year, I introduced legislation that would allow school districts to borrow money and issue bonds for technology upgrades. Because right now, schools can issue bonds for physical capital upgrades, but not for digital infrastructure, which didn't exist in 1972 when these rules were written. So this forces schools to pit tech upgrades against their general funds. My bill would end this, giving schools more flexibility to improve their IT and cybersecurity systems. So we're almost done. I'm also working to create a regulatory framework for hyperbaric oxygen facilities, which I know the council is very aware of. This is in response to the tragic death of a 5-year-old boy in Troy in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber last January. We have learned that hyperbaric chambers can be safe and effective, but only when operated by trained professionals under the supervision of doctors at the very least. My legislation would require hyperbaric providers to meet higher standards for fire prevention, staff training, informed consent, and more. Slide 12. So in 2026, we'll continue working on this and other legislation. I will continue to work and fight for the reinstatement of funding for the Troy Historic Village. I will continue also hosting monthly community conversations for constituents. I rotate locations around Troy, Clawson, Royal Oak, and Bloomfield Township. The schedules are posted on my website and announced in my newsletters, which we'll see on the next slide. Finally, I urge members of City Council and staff to please consider contacting me with spending item requests for fiscal year 2027. The sooner, the better. And next and last slide. Thank you all very much for your attention. This is contact information for my office. Again, anyone in Troy who lives west of John R., with a few northern exceptions, I am your state representative, so you should feel free to make your voices heard. You can contact me with opinions, questions, or if you need assistance, please do contact us at sharonmcdonald@house.mi.gov or at, oops, I went off a little aside, at the phone number 517-373-2617. And that's all I have. And I can attempt to answer questions if you have any.
Thank you, Representative McDonald. Appreciate you coming forward. I see Councilmember Gunn's hand went up first.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Sharon.
Hi.
For my first question, so I know you said that 21 cents will now go to roads on gas tax. And there is a plan to cover that 4% and 2% for schools and revenue sharing?
Well, I think that's why revenue sharing is a bit down. Everything's been kind of moved around, a bit of a shell game, which isn't a negative, except I think there's some concerns, as I said, with public schools, because over time, the part of the budget that should be going just to public schools is kind of getting split up, and pieces are going to higher education and other places. And unfortunately, some of the stopgaps they put in the public education funding are actually one-year temporary funding. So we're going to be watching really closely this year how they attempt to shore that all up.
Well, I know you said we're going to increase registration fees for electric vehicles. Is there a way to tax them when they're charging it like you do with gas?
What they've done to find these, increasing these fees, and there are people who are writing me because the fees are going up a little steeply this year, and that's because they've done studies on trying to match the fees that you pay to the state that go to roads based on your first 4,000 miles that you drive in a given year. So basically, the fees that people will be paying to the Secretary of State's office, those will match somebody who's paying gas taxes at the tank. They'll be the same amount of money, and that's how they've tried to make it fair across the board.
That's what I thought, because I'm not against EVs, but
Right,
they're
fair
using
share.
the roads, right?
Right, and they're heavier, yes.
My last question is that I appreciate that for your oxygen, for what you
Hyperbaric chambers.
maybe name it after that boy that died. I mean, that was horrible. And last thing, just personal, my daughter said to say thank you for sending the letter for graduation.
Oh.
Oh, you're on the agenda, so.
Tell her she's very welcome, and congratulations again.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Chanda, do you have a question?
Yeah, I had on the same token, I think we are, disappointed about the Troy Historic District funding, and hopefully we can restore that. I think as a municipal leader, excited about the 3.8 million increase in
Yes.
funding for the road. So my question is how stable it is. Is that solely based on 21 cents gas tax, or there marijuana tax and all the other stuff?
Yeah, I think I gave this presentation to another city, and it was way too long, so I realized we left out, as you may have heard, a cannabis tax.
Yeah.
24% is part of what they think is going to boost up those dollars to that degree if sales continue the way they are. I know we don't have cannabis stores in Troy, but that was the hope. And that's just basically how the numbers came out when the negotiations were going on. Whether that will come to pass, I know the first year it's supposed to be $1 billion for gas taxes and creep up to 1.8 over time. So we'll see how that goes.
Like 3.8 is a good number, but if it goes down to 1 million next year, it's probably
Right.
going to be a problem. Okay, thanks. And also thanks to sending my son for that similar letter last year, or the year ago. So I appreciate that.
You're welcome. And you can thank my staffer, Nabil Shamra, who helps me do those.
I'm just going to go down the line. Councilmember Chamberlain?
Thank you, Mayor. Of course, we were waiting to hear what would happen with local road funding. So that is good news.
Yay.
I never stopped to ask, when might we start seeing that? How does it work, the mechanics of how we receive that?
That I don't know, but I can find out and respond back to the council. The mechanics. Ooh.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for coming, Rep. McDonald. I think they do it monthly, and I think it may have already started with the new fiscal year. I don't remember.
Is
fully,
it,
but
would it be the same
The
way
road
that the
funding, yeah.
revenue sharing is done?
yeah,
Is
it's
it the
kind of, so I
same
think it already
channel?
probably happened, but I'll leave it to
Okay,
her.
yeah, I want to make sure
Finance
that we
staffers,
give the
but,
right answer.
Do you feel the fiscal year 27 budget, this is kind of a loaded question, will be a little less dramatic
Contentious?
than this year because the major changes went in? I know it's an election year, it's going to be, there's still a few loose ends, and as you know, the shell game you said. But do we feel, because it was hard for us to plan, for schools to plan, do we feel maybe the big issues are settled and it'll be, because it's an election year, it'll be a little more, moderate, I guess, not as extreme? Or how do you, what's your opinion on that?
I do not have a crystal ball, but I would love to say we're seeing some of the drama calming down, but as of yet, that's not happening. But maybe that first year did, maybe they got some of the things they want. Everyone got some of the things they want. I know there were some other things that were killed in the budget that were really, really important to a lot of people, including me, like the Autism Navigator Program that was just a drop in the bucket compared to everything else in the budget. So we'll see. It was not a very transparent process. I think we had about 30 minutes to read the, hundreds of pages, which we were all desperately running around the floor trying to figure out what it was. Adding the drama, the last-minute nature of it, and the lack of transparency was not a good thing, so I'm hoping we'll see something better this year.
And then what happened with the $5 million for Square Lake? Because I drive on Square Lake every day, I live off of it. It desperately needs some love, so, and I know we were waiting on this, so are we gonna try again next year? I mean, that'll
We
come up, our advance long-term.
Well, I hope that the $3.8 million will be a little down payment on that. I know there are probably
right.
many places that need help. But no, I can't. Also, my crystal ball for that is on the fritz, I'm afraid. I wish I could promise something.
Councilmember
Yes,
Brooks?
thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much, Representative McDonald, for all you're doing for your constituents. And one thing I just wanted to ask you to expand upon a little bit was the Public Safety Trust Fund. Can you describe a little bit more about what we expect to see with that?
I am wondering if locally the police department might know better than I do, or if the city manager might, but my understanding is basically cities that have more problems. I think it might be something like a $15 million pool or something like that. And so they're just deciding what's the cities, what they get based on that math problem of comparing the population to the amount of crime. So some of our urban areas are getting a higher percentage of those dollars, and some of our rural areas that have problems with other issues will also be getting a higher percentage of that pool. But that's what I know. I think it was something that was worked out mostly between Lansing leadership and Mayor Duggan of Detroit. and that's where it came from. That's my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
So at least we'll get something out of that. It's, every dollar helps.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councilmember Bloom?
Thanks, Representative McDonald, really comprehensive update. One question that I had, piggybacking off of Councilmember Hamilton, is the question about the TPD mobile command that was denied. Anything that we can learn there as we think about our advance or how to position for 2027 dollars?
You know, I'm trying to avoid saying the obvious. You won't believe this, but in a political institution, politics run rampant. So it does have something to do with who's in power in terms of who gets the dollars. So making a good case for any dollars we request is always very helpful. And getting a lot of buy-in from the community and
Makes sense.
maybe even other communities can be very helpful. But I can work together with Rep. Kuhn on that.
Thank you.
I had a question. I don't think it's actually for you, Sharon. We paid for our fire truck already, is my understanding. So that part of the slide is not at issue, correct?
Right. Well, we knew that it was part of the cut, but I didn't know until today when I was a little late checking my homework.
Just making sure that that's not at risk, because I heard about it right before the meeting as an issue.
Yes.
And I thought, first I've heard of that, but that's it. Thank you for coming. Appreciate I appreciate your time, and
Thank you.
appreciate you representing us in Lansing. Good luck.
Thank you.
That concludes certificates of recognition and special presentations. We have no carryover items this evening. We move on to public hearings. We have one. E1 is the City of Troy 2026 to 2030 Parks and Recreation Master Plan public hearing. Who's introducing this item? Our new, hold on. It's me. It's you, Brian. Nice to see you, Brian Gould, our Recreation Director. For some reason, it's not on my agenda like normally, so.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We're excited to bring you the 2026 to 2030 Parks and Recreation Master Plan to view today. I wanted to start off by thanking all the city staff that helped to get the feedback needed to create this plan. The master plan was approved unanimously by the Parks and Rec Advisory Board on November 20th. And I have Chris Nordstrom from Carlisle Wortman and Associates here with me tonight, and he's going to provide a short presentation hitting the highlights of the plan.
Thank you very much for having me tonight. Can you go to the next slide, please? So the big question for those of you who have not gone through this process in the past, why do we do it? Obviously, the best reason for it is that we want to try to get a better understanding of what your residents want in your parks and recreation system. So we do extensive public outreach, talk to them, say what works, what doesn't work, and they give us the feedback, and from there we build our plan accordingly to reflect the needs and wants of your constituents. In reality, for a lot of communities, the reason we do these recreation plans is that the DNR requires that you have a recreation plan on file with them to be eligible for grant funding. And there are three primary grant funds that the DNR administers. The Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund has a $400,000 maximum grant amount with a 25% minimum match for development projects, with an unlimited amount for acquisition. So if you decided that you wanted to acquire some land somewhere in the city to do further development, you could do that, but there is the match component to keep in mind. The Land and Water Conservation Fund is actually a federal grant that's administered through the DNR. Very similar situation there, where they've got a $500,000 max for development projects. Again, no limit on acquisition projects, but they do require a minimum 50% match. I will say that if you are doing the Land and Water Conservation Fund, you're realistically you're going to have a 50% match there too. And the third grant program is the Recreation Passport Grant, which when you get your driver's license, you have an opportunity to check a box saying you want to donate, I think it's $14 to that. It's a much smaller program, more typically oriented for communities that don't have quite the same robust parks and recreation system as Troy does. So it's $150,000 maximum for development with a minimum 25% match. Can we go to the next slide, please? So we did some really extensive public outreach. The primary focus or primary mode of outreach was an online survey, which we offered from June 15 through September 15 in 2025. It was advertised in the city and park websites, in the 54 newsletter, the Troy Recreation Guide, and on social media. We received 870 responses, with 96% of those responses coming from city residents. That's a really good turnout rate. I know it seems small when you talk about a community with 80,000 people, but the reality is, I think we're all inundated with surveys, so getting nearly 900 responses is a really good turnout. Next slide, please. So what we heard, it was very similar results this time around as what we heard with the previous recreation plan, which I also helped with. Your residents are happy with their park system. If you look at the participants who actually visited the parks, all of them indicated that they were either satisfied or very satisfied with your individual facilities, and that's a great turnout. The top 3 facilities in terms of satisfaction rates were the Troy Historic Village, which we've just heard about, the Stage Nature Center, and the new rink at Stein Community Center. The bottom 3, and again, if you look at these numbers, you can see they're still pretty solid numbers, was the Daisy Knight Dog Park, Troy Trails, and the Redwood Park, and we'll touch a little bit more on some of those a little bit later on here too. The highest priority this time, as with the last plan, is maintaining and upkeeping your existing facilities. 98% said that they considered that to be important or very important. And the second ranked choice question on maintaining was the top item there. Common requests were updating equipment and facilities, especially the restrooms and locker rooms, play equipment, and the trails. Next slide, please. So trail development is something that is wildly popular in every community that I've worked in Southeast Michigan and across the state. And it was wildly popular here too. 73% indicated they wanted to see the Troy Trails expanded. But one of the problems was I think there's still a lot of people that don't know that Troy Trails exist. So there was definitely about half of the respondents said, what trails? We don't know about it. Of those who had used the trails, 67% said they were very satisfied or satisfied with it, with the most common complaints being that they're disjointed, they're too short, they're disconnected from another, they lead to nowhere. You know, this is not the Aaron Bell Trail at this point, but maybe we'll get there in future years. So, next slide, please. With programming, over half of your residents, or half of the survey participants, indicated they do participate in programming with sports, fitness, and aquatic programs being the most popular. The common complaints in this instance were the lack of inclusive and adaptive programs and outdated senior programs. I will say, however, that if you do a comparison to the National Recreation and Parks Association data, Troy's recreation program system is in the top quartile by far. I mean, they're really probably in the top 2 or 3% of your peer institutions. Next slide, please. Some of the other concerns that people talked about, again, this kind of goes back to inclusive play. A lot of people talked about Innovation Hills in Rochester and wanting to see a big destination park. So the city has been doing a great job of bringing your playground equipment up to ADA standards and exceeding it. And the new playground equipment at Sylvan Glen Lake Park, the recent upgrades at Beach Road Park, and some of the others, and major improvements that are currently underway at Bowen are going to really address a lot of those concerns. A number of residents wanted to see more access to nature. That's a tough one to do when you've got a built-out city like Troy. And again, they mentioned that they wanted to see that connected by non-motorized trails. And ultimately, just improving communication and engagement with residents is something that is going to be really critical to make sure that the park system moves forward, and that residents are heard and that they're hearing what they need to know to make sure that your system is successful. Next slide, please. So the action plan, and this is where I throw out my big disclaimer. the action plan is ultimately, here's the projects that we're looking at over the next 5 years. And recreation plans are meant to be aspirational in nature. In other words, every line item that's on that action plan is probably not going to get built in the next 5 years. But by having them listed in your recreation plan, you're indicating to the DNR that this is something that we really would like to do, assuming that we can make everything line up the way we need it to. So when you look at that, if you add up all the numbers, you kind of get short of breath. But it is with the understanding that there, certain projects are going to rise to the top over the next 5 years. There's going to be a lot of variation. So that's why we have that much in there. The cost estimates that we provided are deliberately done with a range, partly because we've seen how much prices can fluctuate over a very short period of time, and partly just, to look at other uncertainties that maybe can't be reflected at this time. There are 58 unique projects listed on this, ranging from low-cost items like wayfinding signage to major items like the playground upgrades at Bowland Park. And so some of these projects are expansion of the Troy Trails, play equipment upgrades at 5 different parks, restroom and locker room improvements at 8 parks, and ADA improvements at 8 other properties. Next slide, please. And with that, I would like to answer any questions if I can.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your presentation. Appreciate the slides. Appreciate the images, the beautiful images of our parks. Now, Courtney, I don't know if you had played a role in that, but whoever got the pictures of this, very nicely done. I saw Councilmember Gunn put his hand up first.
Well, first I want to say, amazing job. I read through all 221 pages of, well, I assume it's going to be Kurt's playbook, right? But I want to point out a couple things. I'm glad you pointed out about the 3 fundings options. I really like the inclusive and the ADA for the playgrounds. And I think, focusing on what we already have is kind of what we've been talking about with the bond. And anything extra can go towards the, as you put, aspirational goals. So I think really well done by your team, by the staff. Just amazing job. So thank you. Now, Kurt?
Thank you, Councilmember Gunn. Did you have a hand? Or Councilmember Chamberlain?
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of questions. So when I read through the document, it took me a while to find it, but the hundreds and hundreds of pages there, something I did not see, unless I missed it, was collaboration potentially with the Troy School District. I ask this because residents often ask me, is there a win-win to partner with the district, say with their bond, if they're building an indoor track at some point? Not to say they are. And this resident talking about seniors, in the winter needing options to walk inside. Could there ever be a chance to partner and it be a win-win around the use of facilities? Did that come out? Did you explore that? Can you explain?
I didn't see that in the survey responses. I will say that it gets a little bit tricky when you do that because you start talking about different jurisdictions. Grant funding can be problematic when you start bringing in school districts as well, because I know that the DNR grants are aimed at the primary recreation providers. So school districts aren't necessarily, they're not eligible for grant funds, for example. That being said, I think that does kind of go back to the idea of communication and making sure that as your school districts are finding shortcomings within their own facilities and the city is finding shortcomings, maybe they can come together to say, okay, look, here's this opportunity for a new running track or a new gym or what have you. Because they do get very expensive, and if there's a way to do something that ticks off the boxes that both entities need, that would be the ideal solution.
Absolutely. Another question relates to, so I really dug into the alternative sources for funding. It's something I'm very interested in. Talked about TAP funding. Something I met someone from SEMCOG recently, and they talked about it's really an untapped resource for us. There's so much possibility, and the TAP funds can be used as well as for wayfinding. Thank you for that. It was suggested as a very easy win for wayfinding, as well as for the bike racks, and to address further connections between the trails. That my understanding is that's what was frustrating residents. They want to see kind of the interconnections between the trails. Do you have thoughts on that, or just from your experience working with other municipalities?
Yes, so TAP grants are great, but you're talking about federal dollars. So you get very specific about what can and cannot be done. They have to be done to, exact details. So a lot of communities kind of shy away from that a little bit, and they start with the DNR funds first, or at least use that as a match, because that's one of the fun things with these grant programs, is you can use one grant program to fund your match for another one, so that you've got more money coming in. And with these trail projects, they get really expensive really quickly. So to your point about wayfinding and bike racks and benches and the smaller stuff, I don't typically see TAP dollars being used for that because it's such a large pool of money. You know, that's usually, you're gonna put in your 10-foot wide multi-use path that's going through wherever. But it is something that certainly I think is a good opportunity for the city, especially as you're looking to start connecting these different segments of the Troy Trails and looking at new segments that are going to be developed. Yes, it makes perfect sense to use that fund as well.
Last question, it's on alternative funding as well, and you're the perfect person to ask, because presumably you're working with other municipalities on these sorts of plans. Something that I've heard of other municipalities finding success in is creating, through a local community foundation, endowment funds for recreational facilities. We actually have one now for the Gene Stein Park. That is a local endowment just for maintenance. Other communities do that for just trails and pathways. They might have a local entrepreneur who seeds that, and it grows funds and is used just for maintenance. Are those things that you've seen? Because I'm going to keep talking about that. I know I have over the years in budget sessions, but just would love to hear if you've seen in other communities.
In my communities, I have not seen that happen a lot. The most common methods of funding are it's either just coming from the general fund, or you've got a specific millage set up for your parks and recreation system or trail system. Some of your neighbors have that in place now too. It's certainly not a bad idea. I don't know a lot about what's required to set that up though, so I don't want to speak too much about it. It's not common, but again, I think you're absolutely right when you're talking about dollars that are very difficult to grab these days. Coming at it from different angles, or as many different angles as possible, is certainly the wise way to go.
Thank you.
Actually, I have a quick follow-up on the first question you asked, or Councilmember Chamberlain. Just for clarity, if it's not in this Parks and Recreation master plan for the next 5 years, does that prohibit us from doing something?
No.
Okay,
So you can do, this is a guide. You can, there's an understanding that things change. New opportunities are going to pop up that we just cannot foresee right now. So if this was something that you wanted to pursue grant funding for, then what we would want to do is an amendment to the plan, and that's easy enough to do.
Thank you. Just needed that clarification. Mayor Pro Tem Chanda, did you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thanks for the presentation. I mean, I read through the master plan, and it's really a masterpiece. I mean, it's really nice. A lot of details. Couple of questions. One is, the satisfaction survey, there are 3 on the top and 3 bottom. Even though the bottom 2 out of 3 are satisfied, do we know what they're not happy about, apparent resident?
Troy Trails was the easy one. Again, I think I kind of touched on that already. Daisy Knight has historically had some flooding issues. I think that's something that is still kind of in the mind of people, but I know that a lot of that's been addressed, and they're working on some of the other common problems. And forgive me, I've got to look back and think.
Redwood, yeah.
I'm sorry, which one was it?
Redwood Park. I think.
Oh, yeah. I honestly don't remember what it was about Redwood that made it stand out, and I apologize for that.
No problem, yeah. And then follow-up question on the trails. And I also, as a resident, I did not know about the trails until I, started to take more interest in the city matter. So knowing that trails exist, I think, is a relatively simple thing we can do. But connecting the trails is probably the biggest issue. I guess the question is, I saw in page 129 or somewhere in the plan, there is a trail master plan, I believe, which has a detailed drawing of the possible trails. Is created in 2008 or 2009. Is this still valid? I mean, in other words, if we get the money, can we implement some of those? I mean,
it's valid in that it is a plan that's on file with the city. I think in terms of its validity, considering it's been almost 20 years, it's probably due to be reexamined. Yeah, there's a lot of, there's been, since 2009, I mean, the Iron Belt Trail was not even a glimmer in anybody's eye at that point. So it might be worth looking at doing some kind of a master plan update. But in the meantime, it does show the general layout that people were talking about then is still pretty valid now. And it is something that you can point to, again, as you're looking at trail funding and saying this is something we've been talking about since quite a while now.
Right. Thank you.
Member Hamilton.
This question's probably more directed at city staff, but I'll throw it out there anyway. I didn't see too much in this plan about collaborations with the county doubling their tax, property tax for, has doubled their budget. And so we're looking ways to collaborate them, and we've had a few successes in that. But I want to know, like, for the next 5 years, what we are going to see with that. And then I also want to know what the latest is with Turtle Woods, and that about to become a county park or a county nature preserve. I just haven't gotten an update on that, so I kind of think it's a good time to check in on that, so it might be city staff
How would
to
you
handle
handle that
that.
one?
Yeah, so possibly DPW could answer more about the park questions on it. As far as I know, Turtle Creek is in process. As far as funding from Oakland County, we do get some grants from them for some of the rec stuff. Oakland County gives us things for our special events, do a RAP grant, things like that. But any additional funding, I have not heard of any that additional that is coming to us.
Understood.
Was there additional?
I just had one more quick question.
One second, Mark.
I can call up either
If
Kurt
there- if there's
Bovensieper or
not, then
Dennis
I don't
if
worry
they
about it.
have
Don't
it.
worry about it. Just-
I think there is.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I don't have an update on Turtle Woods, other than I know they acquired the property to develop the parking lot and to have access to Turtle Woods, not off the subdivision, which was originally
Yeah, I
intended.
can see it now.
But I don't know where they are actually in their development process and getting that as usable. As far as the partnership with the county, we have met with the county several occasions. That's what instituted us receiving the $250,000 additional for the inclusive park. We've pitched the county on several different ideas that came up last year at the Capitol Conference to see if there's any interest. I believe there is. I believe Oakland County recognizes that as the largest community in Oakland County, we also we contribute the most amount of tax dollars to that village, so I think
$4.5 million a year.
yeah, so I think they do recognize that, and I think there is lots of opportunities to partner with that. I know most of that funding was spent up on the Clinton River Trail, which is why we only received $250,000 for the inclusive park. And I think I do. Stay tuned. We continue to meet with the county and pitch our different ideas that we need assistance with as far as funding goes.
Yep, and I appreciate everything you guys done, but we've given them a substantial amount of money, and in the past, that's gone towards the county parks, which are mostly in the north and in the more rural areas, so let's keep doing what you're doing. And
I will remind the council member that your friends, you have good friendships with some of those county people, so you can probably do just as much.
I will.
Just
I
like
am.
Sharon reminded us about the party in power in Lansing, there's things that happen.
Agreed, you're right.
Any new questions before we go to follow-ups?
Yeah.
From the new
question.
our council. I'm trying to follow council rules for whatever reason, but you have anything? You can come back. I just want to make sure. You were up first with a follow-up, and then you.
My only follow-up, well, not new question is, the recreation passport, doesn't that just go to county or state parks, not city parks?
No, it can go to any park.
You can?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yep. It's, the main difference is I believe that the recreation passport allows you to do some inside recreation work, whereas the Land and Water Conservation and Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund is almost exclusively outdoor recreation. So that might come into play like with the community center, they're doing something there. But again, I think realistically, the city would be looking more at Land and Water Conservation Fund if I were applying for anything.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Councilmember Chamberlain.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a two-finger follow-up on Redwood. So
Yes.
I believe Redwood, and this might be for staff, is one of our pickleball court, one of the early parts of pickleball courts. So I don't know if that was more demand for pickleball, or I don't know if that's residents finding it loud in the area. So I don't know if
That-
staff
no,
know any
as soon as
details.
thank you. Yes, that
Pickleball.
is something that, pickleball players are a unique bunch. You know, you can give them whatever they ask for, and they want a little bit more afterwards. So I think that's part of where the frustration was with that one, that, you know, the parking lot was a little bit small, it couldn't accommodate all the traffic that was coming in there to use the pickleball courts. Again, you know, realistically, when you're looking at the satisfaction levels as high as they were, even though those were the bottom three, yes, it's something to pay attention to, but it wasn't something that, you know, alarm bells went off in my mind, that there was something just drastically wrong.
That's helpful. I thought to ask that because I know in the early days of when I was on council and people were speaking of pickleball, I went out to Redwood because I was recommended by those players to go out to Redwood, see how it's packed, how it's used. And that's an example, I believe, of the previous plan. Pickleball did not necessarily feature prominently, but it became a prominent issue during COVID, and we pivoted. So, yeah, thank you.
I have a question for city staff that I don't know that you're going to have an answer to now, but maybe you could follow up. Is there, and I have a feeling if anyone would know, it might be Bob, but I'm going to, could somebody provide us with some information on how much the city of Rochester Hills has spent on Innovation Hills and where that funding has come from? Because we get a lot of pressure to be like Innovation Hills, but they have dedicated tax revenue that goes to their parks, and I know it's been a huge expenditure. I would like to be able to have, if there's consensus to get that question
Yes,
answered.
sure.
The information to say, well, this is what that community's paying for that park. I mean, that would really help me, so.
And Mayor,
Yeah.
not just Innovation Hills, but everything that they do, because we get a lot of comparisons
I don't know if
to
I want to go
Rochester
quite
Hills.
that far and comprehensive with my question.
I'm saying regarding recreation, because they have 20% higher taxes than
Well, they have,
us.
and they
So,
have a
yeah,
dedicated
so,
parks
yeah.
millage, so I get, but specifically for me, I mean, Innovation Hills is what we hear constantly, and we can maybe start there. But yeah, I mean, if there's certainly a line about what their dedicated parks and rec millage is, aside from
think that-
how we don't have it, would be helpful.
We can gather that information and get it back to council, either in a report or memo form.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Any other questions on the presentation?
Same token, the Dodge Park in Sterling Heights, I believe they had a dedicated.
That's
millage.
also a dedicated,
Yeah, so
okay.
those are the two things we always hear about, how great the parks are, but talking to their council member, there was a dedicated millage just for Parks and Rec,
Right.
0.9 or something, like a huge
Okay.
amount, so, but let's find out the actual number and think.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing on E1. I don't see anybody has signed up to speak on E1 in the public hearing, but that doesn't prohibit you from speaking now if you'd like to. All right, I'm going to close the public hearing for E1 and ask if someone would like to move the resolution. Councilmember Chamberlain.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move E1, City of Troy 2026 to 2030 Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Public hearing is printed in the agenda packet.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Chamberlain, supported by Mayor Pro Tem Chanda, that we approve E1, City of Troy 2026 to 2030 Parks and Recreation Master Plan, as printed in the agenda packet. Discussion. We kind of did a little bit of it, but I just want to again thank city staff and for Carlisle Wortman for putting together this comprehensive plan based on our resident feedback and what we've been sharing from this table over the time. I can't believe we're doing another one already. Time moves pretty quickly, but this really is, it was mentioned a little bit, this really is it's always easier to approve a project when we can say it's consistent with the master plan or consistent with the Parks and Recreation Plan. So I do really appreciate, although it's aspirational in nature and has a lot of things in there, it does give a good basis of projects based on feedback we've heard from our community for a long time. So I want to thank the community members that participated in this survey as well. While 870 is a good response for any survey, and I'm just very appreciative of everyone weighing in. So with that, I will ask for the vote from Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Bloom,
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks.
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chanda,
Yes.
Councilmember Gunn,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Yes.
Motion carries. That concludes public hearings this evening. Next up is public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. There's nobody signed up for items on the agenda, so there's no need for reply. We have no postponed items this evening, so we move on to regular business. I-1 is board and committee appointments. First up are mayoral appointments. We do have two. To the Global Troy Advisory Committee, I'll move the appointment of Everett Marshall as the Athens High School student rep and Sehoen Sarah Lee as the Troy High School student rep for the terms expiring July 31st, 2026.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Councilmember Chamberlain, that we approve the appointments as read into the record for the student representatives to the Global Troy Advisory Committee. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Bloom,
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks,
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chanda,
Yes.
Councilmember Gunn,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Yes.
Mayor Baker.
Yes, motion carries. That concludes mayoral appointments. We move on to city council appointments. I'll turn it over to Mayor Pro Tem Chanda.
Thank you, Mayor. I have three. So I move to appoint Karen Amato to the Liquor Advisory Board for the term expiring January 31st, 2027, and Tina Carton to Parks and Recreational Board for the term expiring September 30th, 2027, and reappointment of Sati Joda to the Traffic Committee for the term expiring July 31st, 2026.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Chanda, supported by Councilmember Brooks, that we approve the appointment of Karen Amato to the Liquor Advisory Committee for the term expiring January 31st, 2027. Tina Catron to the Parks and Recreation Board for the term expiring September 30th, 2027, and Swati Jita to the Traffic Committee for the term expiring July 31st, 2026. Any discussion?
Mayor, that was Bloom.
That was
Seconded.
Bloom?
Yeah. Just so you know.
Will you correct the second too? I said Brooks, it was Bloom.
Oh.
Sorry. Any discussion other than that? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Brooks.
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chanda,
Yes.
Councilmember Gunn,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Yes.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Bloom.
Yes.
Motion carries. That concludes city council appointments this evening. Next up, I-2 board and committee nominations. I do have a couple mayoral nominations this evening. First up, to the Board of Review, I renominate John Howard Adams for the term expiring July 31st, 2029. And as the student representative from International Academy for the term expiring July 31st, 2026 to Global Troy Advisory Committee, I nominate Lula Lul DeJure.
Support. That was me this time.
Moved by the chair, supported by Councilmember Brooks, that we approve the nomination of John Howard Adams to the Board of Review for the term expiring January 31st, 2029, and Lula Lul DeJure as the International Academy student rep for the term expiring July 31st, 2026 to the Global Troy Advisory Committee. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Chamberlain,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chanda,
Yes.
Councilmember Gunn,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Yes.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Bloom,
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks.
Yes.
Motion carries. That concludes mayoral nominations this evening, and I do not believe there are any council nominations this evening. Next up, I3, a request for closed session. I'll move be it resolved that Troy City Council shall meet in closed session as permitted by MCL 15.268H, MCL 15.243G and Y, and MCL 15.268E, Staffa et al. Versus Troy, as printed in the agenda packet.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Councilmember Hamilton, that we approve I3, request for closed session, as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Pro Tem Chanda,
Yes.
Councilmember Gunn.
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Yes.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Bloom.
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks.
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain.
Yes.
Motion carries. Our request for closed session has been approved. At the conclusion of our public meeting, we will recess from in here and pick up for our closed session in the council boardroom, where I expect that we will then adjourn from in there. Next up is I4, amendments to City Code Title 1, Chapter 10, Employees Retirement System, and I see Jeanette Menig, our Human Resources Director, is here to present.
I got up a little early.
That was good, because it's not printed in the agenda packet, so I was going to guess.
So, hello, Mayor and Council. I'm here to introduce a change to Chapter 10, which is in the City Code, and it's the Employee Retirement System. I also want you to know that Human Resources is working really closely with CFL Malzik and Attorney Bloom as we review the entirety of Chapter 10, and we'll be bringing more changes as we figure out what we want to recommend. The recommendation presented tonight addresses an inconsistency that has existed for about 20 years, and namely that the police chief, if that individual is eligible for a defined benefit retirement, would now retain the same benefit computation as the Troy Police Command Union, the TCOA. So it would be a continuation of benefit instead of a change. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jeanette. Any questions? Someone like to move the resolution? Councilmember Gunn.
No, it's okay.
Oh, you had a question?
No, it's okay. Go
That's okay. Do you have a question?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Do you want to move the resolution? No, Councilmember Brooks?
I'll move
All right.
it. Okay. I'd like to move I-4, amendments to City Code, Title I, Chapter 10, Employees Retirement System, as printed in the agenda packet.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Brooks, supported by Councilmember Chamberlain, that we approve I-4 amendments to City Code Title I, Chapter 10, Employees Retirement System as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Gunn?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Bloom?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chanda?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next up, I-5, Standard Purchasing Resolution 4, Oakland County and Sourcewell Cooperative Purchasing Contracts, Sanitary Sewer Lift Station Emergency Power Generator Purchase and Installation, Standard Purchasing Resolution 5, Approval to Expend Budgeted Funds, Electric and Gas Utility Installation and Budget Amendment. This will be introduced by Jason Schmidt, Water and Sewer Operations Manager.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The City of Troy Water and Sewer Division operates and maintains 7 sanitary lift stations throughout the city. The continuous and uninterrupted operation of 4 sanitary sewer lift stations is critical to the removal of wastewater from the city. The Water and Sewer Division has experienced multiple storms that have caused widespread power outages, and at times resulting in 3 or more lift stations losing power for several hours. Currently, the Water and Sewer Division has 3 mobile generators that are used to supply temporary power during these situations. At times, 3 mobile generators are not enough to supply backup power to these 4 lift stations in a timely manner. On-site generators allow power to be restored to the lift stations almost instantaneously and uses natural gas, which eliminates the need for city staff to watch fuels or to refuel. In this agenda item, we are asking for approval to purchase and install on-site generators with the budget amendment. The original budget was based on an estimate from the contractor Shaw and the utility companies, but once the design was completed, installation costs increased significantly from the original estimate.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilmember Chamberlain.
Thank you, Mayor. So if I understand correctly, these 4 new generators, I know they're gas-powered, and they're stationary, so they're not moved. They would stay.
Correct.
Whereas the other ones are mobile, electrical, you can move them around.
Correct, yep.
So with that being said, I know they would be at lift stations 1, 2, 3, and 6. How were those 4 lift stations selected for
Those are
this?
the most crucial for the amount of time that you can let them run without power.
Okay.
The remaining 3 can go significantly longer without power. And we would still have our mobile generators for those.
And right now, those other 3, right, they can use those other 3 ones
Correct.
as they're working. Just to understand, if residents were to ask, if we didn't have these, could I presume there could be water, sewage backup, flooding? So
Correct,
that's what's in it for the residents too.
Currently with the 3, we've had some experiences where we had 4 or more out, and we had basically had to run back and forth with 1 or 2 of them. So,
Thank you.
yep.
Thank you. Good questions. Councilmember Bloom.
In the note, it mentioned something about unreliable electrical infrastructure, and so I assume that to mean that that wasn't for when we lose power, which I would assume a generator would be good and necessary to have. But this note here just made me want to ask, is that a longer-term strategy that we need to discuss in terms of funding or fixing? What unreliable electrical infrastructure that's noted here in the history do we need to know more about?
Basically with DTE.
Oh, okay.
If we had an ice storm or rain, multiple power, legs of power go out at once.
Got it. So from the electrical provider perspective, not necessarily from municipal elements that would enable?
Correct.
Understood. Thanks.
Any other questions? Someone like to move this?
Well,
Mayor Pro Tem Chanda?
Yeah, out of curiosity, I mean, why is this so much more than the initial estimate? I mean, this is almost more than 2 times more.
This was started almost 2 years ago.
Okay.
And they gave us an initial estimate, which was in budget, but they couldn't give us an exact estimate until we had the design plans finished, which took 8 months to almost a year to get completed. And then with the cost of generators going up, labor, that's why the cost increased. That we couldn't foresee because they would not give us a quote without a design first.
Someone like to move the resolution? Mayor Pro Tem Chanda?
Yeah. I move I-5, Standard Purchasing Resolution 4, Oakland County and Sourcewell Cooperative Purchasing Contract, Sanitary Sewer Lift Sanitation Emergency Power Generator Purchase and Installation, Standard Purchasing Resolution 5, approved to extend budgetary funds for electric and gas utility installation and budget amendment as printed on the agenda package.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Chanda, supported by Councilmember Gunn, that we approve I-5 Standard Purchasing Resolution 4, Oakland County and Sourcewell Cooperative Purchasing Contracts, Sanitary Sewer Lift Station Emergency Power Generator Purchase and Installation, Standard Purchasing Resolution 5, approval to expend budgeted funds, electric and gas utility installation and budget amendment as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? This is a long time coming. A few years ago, I can remember, maybe it was Kurt telling whoever was city manager at the time about running back and forth, changing those generators, trying to keep up, and the fear and the risk was always, it's catastrophic when these fail and the flooding and the sewers again happen. So I'm excited to see this finally come forward, and I'm really thankful for the continued push to make this happen at the city level. So thank you. The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Bloom?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chanda?
Yes.
Councilmember Gunn?
Yes.
Motion carries. That concludes regular business this evening. Next up is the consent agenda. Would anyone like to pull an item from the consent agenda for further discussion? Councilmember Hamilton.
I'd like to move all items on the consent agenda as printed in the agenda packet.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Hamilton, supported by Councilmember Chamberlain, that we approve all items on the consent agenda as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Bloom?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chanda?
Yes.
Councilmember Gunn?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Motion carries. If you're here for an item on the consent agenda, all have been approved. Next up, no memorandums and future council agenda items to announce. So we move on to public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. We do have one person signed up, Jim Kay. As our council rules provide, you have 3 minutes. When the clock will count down, when it turns yellow, that means you have 1 minute left. When it turns red, that means time's up. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm Jim Kemp. I'm a long-term Troy resident. I own a business here. My background is software development. I've become aware that these cameras were installed, traffic monitoring cameras from a company called Flock, and there's a lot of controversy around them. I just wanted to come and let you know that the surveillance of them just doesn't, pass the smell test. It just doesn't seem right, that our government needs to be monitoring us. I mean, if you look up Flock, Flock Safety, but their #1 patent is called distributed surveillance. So it just doesn't seem like this is a needed system. It's, I think it's over $100,000 a year to have these cameras in our community. I'm not opposed to having cameras. I just don't like a multi-billion-dollar company that's collecting this stuff and sending it to India to have it analyzed for more AI content. Having it recorded every time I pass by these intersections just seems creepy. So $100,000 could be well spent on other things. I hear tonight there's lots of things to spend the money on. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Appreciate it. That concludes those that have signed up for public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. Now's an opportunity for council or administration to respond. We've received, I don't know if you've emailed us, but there is some information that our police chief can provide or has provided in writing to us on several occasions regarding the Flock camera system. Perhaps if you can provide your email address or talk to him, he can give you some additional information, but we appreciate you coming forward this evening. Thank you. Next up, there are no council referrals, so we move on to reports. Would anyone like to make a comment on any of the reports? Councilmember Chamberlain.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll comment on O2B, that is the Q4 Economic Development Report. There's some important nuggets in it. Overall, though, in the future, would love to see more information that goes over kind of acquisitions, new businesses, maybe loss of businesses. I know I learned through, at a football game, family of my son's friend, that Siemens purchased Altair, and that it's starting January 1st, that Siemens sign should be up on Big Beaver. That is a big deal. That is exciting for our city. So would love to see more of that information. In terms of important information in that is, there's information about seeking out a brownfield consultant, given that we have so many brownfield redevelopment projects on the horizon and in the works. And also, it mentions some of those different projects in the pipelines, including a possible potential new office to residential conversion on 1441 Maple. So just encourage everyone to read it. It helps you to get up to speed of what's happening in the city.
Thank you. Good comments. Any additional comments on the reports? All right. Council comments. Councilor Hamilton.
I had 3 topics I wanted to touch on very quickly. The first was just reading about the killing of Renee Good in Minnesota, and I know it's on a lot of people's minds, and I found it very disturbing. And I know the city of Troy is a powerhouse city because of how natural-born citizens and immigrants work together, educate themselves together, become friends with each other together, and to see what's going on in Minnesota and the way that I know we're not supposed to talk about federal issues, but the way our federal government is justifying things that I find un-American is appalling to me. And so I want to speak in solidarity with the people that are equally disturbed by what they saw. I also wanted to talk about that I noticed today that our volunteer firefighter incentive plan sent council and the city a proposed update to their incentive plan. And so for me, personally, as one member of the 7 up here, it isn't a priority for me, to get this plan vetted legally to make sure it meets all the FMLA requirements and other requirements that IRS requirements we've ran into. I would recommend that besides the counsel we've typically used, that we also look to legal counsel from national fire organizations such as the NVFC, which is the National Volunteers Fire Department Association, and the IAFC, which is fire chiefs. That's my recommendation as one of 7. If majority of council agrees, they can discuss with city management as well. And then finally, this Saturday is our annual advance meeting. It's our annual goal-setting meeting. We have a lot to discuss, especially after the bond measure last year and our capital needs, which always fluctuate. And obviously with extra road funding, that's an interesting thing to discuss about our future road needs. We have Parks and Rec master plan, which has come in. That's a big part of the discussion too. And then of course the library and everything else. So I'm looking forward to that. That's a Saturday. Public is more than welcome to come and discuss what their priorities are, and I'll have a lot to say there as well. So,
thank you. Councilmember Bloom.
Hi, thanks again. Appreciate what Councilmember Hamilton said about the firefighter incentive plan, and also wanted to send some gratitude to those firefighters who participated in a joint survey to provide their feedback ahead of our advance. So really took time over the break to read that feedback and thought it was very helpful. I think the other things that I wanted to bring about in terms of gratitude was also seeing the STAR EMS ambulances out and about in Troy, and so I look forward to seeing how that improves service times and their service in our community. And then for those who are looking to add acts of service this January, please join me at Athens on Martin Luther King Day on Monday. There's an event starting at 8:30 in the morning where you can make blankets or donate blood or participate in acts of service in our community. So hope to see you there.
Councilmember Chamberlain.
Thank you, Mayor. Also to echo my colleagues, we head into the advance and we had a chance to share some of our priorities, and we're going to talk about those. And we each, I'm sure, have different things in our minds, but no doubt VFIP, having just heard from the opinion of our firefighters, what they want and what they need, is I hope that we can just at least start talking about what is the best way to address that, and how do we move forward, and being responsive. I know when I was campaigning, that's what I said. I wanted to first of all know, and I wanted the polling, and they did it, and I appreciate that they did that. So do hope we can discuss that. That is a priority. Also wanted to echo what my colleague, Councilmember Hamilton, kind of shared a little bit, that as we start this new year, we have lots of emotions on our minds. Some of us have hope, some have turbulence, some have great pain by what's going on in the world, in our nation. Some have joy. There's a lot of different things on our mind. But what I want to recognize is I want to be reminded that the strength of a community is measured by how well decisions are made closest to the people they impact, and that local decision-making allows leaders to respond with a deep understanding of local needs. So I just want to affirm that commitment. Despite the turbulence in the world, my commitment is to the local, and wanting to do all I can to keep our local values, our local policing, our community policing, that is some of the finest. I saw that when I was a member of Global Troy. I saw how our police department engaged our diverse community. I want to celebrate that. I want to stand with that, and want to really, again, just preserve the power of what we're doing on a local level.
Councilmember Gunn.
A few things here. First, I want to thank Frank and city staff for sending over the support emergency operations plan. That was a big concern when we had that shooting at Corwell in Troy, so I appreciate there's a very detailed plan that was sent over. Also, thank you as well for the EMS information. So far, it looks pretty good. I know we're short into the year, but if we keep up with these responses, I think we're going to improve our time. Also want to bring up about the advanced meeting that was already discussed. For sure, it's a very important meeting for us to plan this year to cover what we didn't accomplish with the bond, but maybe the strategy that we're going to roll out will accomplish what we all intended in the beginning. Also, regarding the firefighters, I saw it as well. It is a high priority for myself. And I think besides the money, the objective here is we have seen a decrease in firefighters. So the incentive is as important to maintain and increase the numbers so we don't have a issue down the road with not enough people to respond to some of the fires. So far, no, but we want to make sure we curtail that. And also, I want to also bring up the MLK Day in Athens. I'll be there as well, and it's a great event, a lot of good information, a lot of good things to distribute, and the blood drive for sure, so come on out and watch me bleed.
Got me there, Mark. I don't know. I have some terrible pictures of years past of me giving blood on a table. It looks awful, but Mayor Pro Tem Chanda.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, basically, Happy New Year, and I wanted to also echo the sentiments. EMS, thanks for getting some of the updates. I know my family personally called the EMS twice in the last 1 week, and they came really fast, so those 2 data points I'm really happy with, but definitely we're looking at statistical analysis of what our response time is, and also went through the VPIV, the volunteer firefighter feedback. We are going to work seriously on that. And then Martin Luther King Day of Service, I am going to be there. Hopefully most of us will be there. So to the residents, please join us in Troy-Athens. It's a wonderful event. And wanted to thank Councilmember Hamilton for bringing up the event in Minnesota. It's close to my heart because 37 years ago I came to Minneapolis as an international graduate student, so that is kind of my home, and I feel really in pain to see the city going through so much turbulence. So I think it's important that we recognize the pain of a segment of the population. And but here in Troy, we are committed, and I have said it over and over again. I think we are a city that is an example to the rest of the world and what a city should be and could be. But thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate that. So, thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Brooks.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, Happy New Year to everybody as well. This is the first meeting of the new year, so Happy New Year. So this past week, I had the opportunity to attend CES, which is the Computer Electronics Show, and AI was very prominently featured at CES. But, you know, there's a lot of things. It was very interesting to see. Michigan was obviously noted for its automotives, and we have a lot of presence there in that sense. But there were a lot of government officials there as well at all different levels of government. And, you know, there's just a lot of things to think about. So, you know, obviously as AI and technology is taking off, you know, having these conversations about what that means, obviously in our day-to-day operations, but also questions about, you know, privacy and how do we protect data. And I know that we've had conversations in the past, you know, with cybersecurity and things like that. But I do think that these conversations are going to become more and more prevalent and more important as technology and AI become more and more a part of our daily lives. So that was just something that reminded me of that when I attended this event. And then finally, yes, I agree. You know, on Monday, we will be celebrating the life and legacy of Dr. King. And so every Martin Luther King's Day, we have a wonderful day of service that Troy Athens does put on. And so it's just a wonderful event. So if everyone can attend, it would be great. If you're unable to attend, it's fine. Just try to honor his legacy in any way that you can and just contribute to society in a positive way. And that's kind of what he was all about, is just, you know, trying to make things better for our country and for the world. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. We've all mentioned MLK Day. Yes, it's this Monday. Be there. We'll be there. All right, good. I want to just touch on the advance on Saturday the 17th for a quick clarification for everybody. If you want to come and be there as a member of the public, awesome. Come watch us. Some of you have been there before. I will tell you right now, the way our council rules are set up and the agenda, public comment is at the very beginning. So if you're not there at the very beginning, you won't have an opportunity to speak during public comment. So keep that in mind. I'm looking at you, Susan, who's nodding. So, but that is the reality of it. I know some people came a couple of years ago in the afternoon, and it's just complicated. Our public comment will be in the very beginning. And also, if you are coming, keep in mind that it is not everything is going to be solved in one day on Saturday. It'll be a conversation with a new council member, especially, to get involved in some of the things as we move forward. But my expectation is that it'll be a culmination of conversations we've been having for several years on top of it. And it is a good opportunity for us to kind of work through things, but it will be there all day. But again, public comments first thing. So if you'd like to speak at the meeting, please be there at the start. You can always email us with your thoughts in advance as well. Appreciate everyone's perspective and comments this evening regarding issues here at home and throughout the country and abroad. I think that's what makes our council what it is. We've continued to represent a very broad, diverse group of people in this community, coming from different perspectives, different mindsets, different viewpoints, but somehow managing to take all of that and come together and work together as a unified body to address the needs of our community. So the comments coming from each of you related to what's happened, what's happening, what's not happening, and then the focus on local issues as well, it kind of summed up exactly in my mind how I view this Troy City Council. So it does feel weird to say Happy New Year, because it seems like we've been saying that for a while, but I wish everybody here a Happy New Year and look forward to continuing to work with all of you into this year with our different perspectives and thoughts. So with that, I don't see anybody signed up for public comment for items on or not on the agenda from members of the public outside of Troy. We do have a closed session, so I'm going to recess here, and we'll pick up for the closed session in the council boardroom.